In the scorching heat of the Afghan desert, where bullets whistle through the air like deadly music, a young woman stands at the crossroads of her destiny. They told her she was just a girl when she first walked into the recruitment office. They whispered the same words when she struggled through basic training. They repeated it when she applied for special forces. But today, as enemy fire rains down on her unit and lives hang in the balance, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell is about to prove that sometimes just a girl is exactly what the world needs. This is the story of how one woman's determination shattered every stereotype, silenced every critic, and left a battle-hardened colonel searching for words that would never come. It's a tale of courage that bloomed in the face of impossible odds, of strength that grew from every no she received, and of a moment that would redefine what it truly means to serve your country. In a world where glass ceilings seem unbreakable and traditions run deeper than mountain roots, Sarah's journey from small-town dreamer to decorated Special Forces officer will challenge everything you think you know about heroism, gender, and the price of proving yourself when the stakes are life and death. Sarah Mitchell stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror of the gas station restroom, her hands trembling slightly as she splashed cold water on her face. The recruitment office was just 3 blocks away, and, in 20 minutes, she would walk through those doors and change her life forever. At 19, with her slight frame and soft features, she looked more like someone heading to college orientation than military service. But appearances, as Sarah had learned throughout her life, could be devastatingly deceiving. Growing up in Millfield, Montana, population 1,847, Sarah had always been the anomaly. While other girls her age were discussing prom dresses and college majors, Sarah spent her afternoons hunting with her grandfather, a decorated Vietnam veteran who saw something special in his granddaughter's steady hands and unwavering focus. He taught her to shoot when she was 12, not because he believed girls should hunt, but because Sarah had begged him for months, wearing him down with her persistence and genuine fascination with marksmanship. Her grandfather, Thomas Mitchell, had served 3 tours in Vietnam and returned home with medals he never displayed and stories he rarely told. But, with Sarah, he shared fragments of his experiences, carefully chosen lessons about courage, duty, and the weight of responsibility. He watched as she absorbed every word, her green eyes intense with understanding that seemed far beyond her years. When Sarah could consistently hit a tin can from 200 yards with his old hunting rifle, Thomas knew his granddaughter possessed something extraordinary. The decision to join the military hadn't come from family pressure or lack of opportunities. Sarah had received a partial scholarship to Montana State University, where she could have studied veterinary medicine, a dream she'd harbored since childhood. Her parents, both teachers in the local school district, had painted a comfortable picture of her future: college, career, marriage, children, all following the predictable pattern of small-town life. But Sarah felt a restlessness that couldn't be satisfied by conventional expectations. The turning point came during her senior year of high school when a group of Army recruiters visited Millfield High School. Most students treated the presentation as a welcome break from regular classes, chatting quietly or checking their phones while the uniformed officers spoke about service, honor, and opportunities for advancement. Sarah, however, found herself captivated by their stories of missions around the world, of making a difference in places where hope seemed impossible. After the presentation, she approached Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, a compact woman with intelligent eyes and a confident bearing that commanded respect. Sarah peppered her with questions about combat roles, special forces, and opportunities for women in the military. Rodriguez answered honestly, explaining the challenges and limitations, but she also saw something in Sarah's determination that reminded her of herself 15 years earlier. "Why do you want to serve?" Rodriguez asked, studying Sarah's face carefully. "Because I want to matter," Sarah replied without hesitation. "I want to do something that makes a real difference, not just for me, but for people who can't protect themselves. I want to be part of something bigger than this town, bigger than anything I could do alone." Rodriguez nodded slowly. She had heard similar sentiments from countless young recruits, but something in Sarah's tone suggested a depth of conviction that went beyond youthful idealism. Over the next hour, they discussed training requirements, career paths, and the realities of military life. When Sarah mentioned her interest in special forces, Rodriguez didn't laugh or discourage her, but she did explain the brutal reality of the selection process and the fact that very few women had successfully completed the training. "It's not impossible," Rodriguez said carefully, "but you need to understand what you're up against. The physical requirements are extreme, the mental pressure is designed to break people, and you'll face challenges that have nothing to do with your actual abilities. Some of those challenges will come from people who believe women don't belong in combat roles. Instead of discouraging Sarah, these warnings only strengthened her resolve. That night, she sat in her grandfather's workshop, surrounded by the tools and trophies of his lifetime, and told him about her decision. Thomas listened quietly, his weathered hands working on a piece of wood he was carving, a habit that helped him think through difficult conversations. "You know it won't be easy," he said finally, not looking up from his work. "Nothing worthwhile ever is," Sarah replied, unconsciously echoing something he had told her years earlier. Thomas smiled then, the first time she had seen him truly smile in months. His health had been declining, the ghosts of war and the weight of years taking their toll, but, in that moment, he seemed to find new energy in his granddaughter's determination. "Then, you better start preparing," he said, setting down his carving tools. "If you're going to do this, you're going to do it right." The next 6 months became an intensive preparation period that would have broken most people. Thomas designed a training regimen that combined physical conditioning with mental toughness exercises drawn from his military experience. Sarah woke at 4:30 every morning to run 5 miles before school, followed by strength training in the basement gym Thomas had improvised from old farm equipment and military surplus gear he had acquired over the years. Evenings were devoted to studying military history, tactics, and current events. Thomas had maintained subscriptions to several military journals throughout his retirement, and he guided Sarah through analyses of modern conflicts, helping her understand not just the mechanics of warfare, but the strategic thinking that drove military decision-making. He taught her to think several moves ahead, to consider not just immediate objectives but long-term consequences. The physical training was brutal but methodical. Thomas had Sarah carry weighted packs on her morning runs, gradually increasing the weight until she could manage 60 pounds for 10 miles without stopping. He taught her hand-to-hand combat techniques he had learned in the army, modified for her smaller frame but no less effective. Most importantly, he helped her develop the mental resilience that would prove crucial in the months ahead. "The body can endure almost anything if the mind is strong enough," he told her one evening after a particularly grueling training session. "But the mind needs to be trained just like any muscle. You have to learn to push through pain, exhaustion, and doubt. You have to learn to function when everything inside you wants to quit." Sarah's transformation was remarkable. Her slight frame developed lean muscle and impressive endurance. Her marksmanship skills, already excellent, reached expert levels under her grandfather's tutelage. More importantly, she developed an inner toughness that would serve her well in the challenges ahead. Her parents watched this transformation with a mixture of pride and concern. They had initially hoped Sarah's military interest was a phase that would pass, but, as months went by and her commitment only grew stronger, they began to understand that their daughter had found her true calling. Her mother, Linda, struggled with fears about her daughter entering a dangerous profession, while her father, Robert, admired her dedication even as he worried about the obstacles she would face. The night before Sarah left for the recruitment office, the family gathered for dinner at Thomas's house. The conversation was subdued, filled with the weight of impending change. Thomas had grown noticeably weaker in recent months, and everyone understood that this might be one of their last family dinners with him present. "I'm proud of you, Sarah," he said quietly as they finished eating. "You remind me of the best soldiers I served with. You have the heart for this, and that matters more than anything else." Sarah felt tears threatening but forced them back. She had learned to control her emotions during training, understanding that showing vulnerability could be perceived as weakness in the military environment she was entering. "Promise me something," Thomas continued, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Promise me you'll never let anyone convince you that you don't belong. You have every right to serve your country, and you have the skills to do it better than most. Don't let anyone tell you different." Sarah nodded, squeezing her grandfather's hand. In that moment, she felt the full weight of his faith in her abilities, and she understood that she was carrying not just her own dreams, but the dreams of everyone who had ever been told they weren't strong enough, brave enough, or worthy enough to serve. The next morning, as she walked the 3 blocks from the gas station to the recruitment office, Sarah carried herself with new confidence. She had spent months preparing for this moment, and she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The recruitment office was a modest building with government-issued furniture and walls covered with posters depicting various military career options. Sergeant First Class Morrison, a tall man with graying temples and intelligent eyes, reviewed Sarah's preliminary application. Her test scores were exceptional, her physical fitness results impressive for someone her age and size. But Morrison had seen promising recruits before, and he knew that potential didn't always translate to success in the demanding world of military service. Why Special Forces? Morrison asked, the same question Sarah had answered dozens of times in her mind. Because I want to serve at the highest level possible, Sarah replied. I want to be where I can make the biggest difference, where my skills and training can have the greatest impact. Morrison nodded, making notes on her file. You understand that the failure rate for Special Forces training is extremely high? That most people who attempt it don't make it through? I understand that, Sarah said evenly. But I also understand that someone has to make it through, and I believe I can be one of those people. There was something in her tone, a quiet confidence that impressed Morrison. He had interviewed thousands of potential recruits over his career, and he had learned to distinguish between bravado and genuine determination. Sarah possessed the latter in abundance. The training is designed to push you beyond what you think is possible, Morrison continued. You'll face physical challenges that will test every limit you think you have. You'll face mental pressure designed to break your spirit. And you'll face skepticism from some people who don't believe women belong in combat roles. Are you prepared for all of that? Sarah met his gaze steadily. Sergeant, I've been preparing for this my entire life. I know it won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is. I'm ready to prove that I belong here. Morrison completed the paperwork, officially beginning Sarah's journey into military service. As she signed the final documents, Sarah thought about her grandfather's words, about the months of preparation, about the dreams that had brought her to this moment. She was no longer the small-town girl who had attended that recruitment presentation at Millfield High School. She was a woman with a mission, armed with skills, determination, and an unshakable belief in her own potential. The first step of her journey was complete, but Sarah knew that the real challenges lay ahead. Basic training would test everything she had learned, and beyond that loomed the even more demanding prospect of Special Forces selection. But, as she walked out of the recruitment office with her orders in hand, Sarah felt ready for whatever the army could throw at her. She had spent her entire life being underestimated, and she was about to show the world exactly what just a girl could accomplish when she set her mind to something extraordinary. The bus ride to Fort Moore felt endless, a journey through landscapes that grew increasingly foreign to Sarah's Montana-trained eyes. As the vehicle rumbled through Georgia's humid forests, she studied her fellow recruits, noting the nervous energy that filled the cramped space. Some were clearly trying to project confidence they didn't feel, while others sat in contemplative silence, perhaps questioning their decisions for the first time. Sarah occupied a window seat near the back, her backpack containing everything she owned that mattered, a photo of her grandfather, a letter from her parents, and the worn hunting knife Thomas had given her as a goodbye gift. The knife bore the inscriptions of his military service, and he had made her promise to carry it as a reminder of where she came from and why she was there. Fort Moore appeared through the morning haze like a sprawling city unto itself, complete with countless buildings, training facilities, and thousands of people in uniform moving with purpose that seemed both urgent and routine. Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension as the bus pulled through the main gate, where drill sergeants waited like predators assessing their next meal. The transformation began immediately. Within minutes of stepping off the bus, Sarah and her fellow recruits were lined up, shouted at, and hustled toward a processing center where they would officially become soldiers. The drill sergeants moved with practiced efficiency, their voices carrying across the formation like controlled thunder, designed to overwhelm and disorient. Drill Sergeant Martinez, a compact woman with steel in her eyes and authority in every gesture, seemed to take particular notice of Sarah. Not because of any failing or weakness, but because something in Sarah's bearing suggested she wouldn't break easily. Martinez had been breaking recruits for 12 years, and she had developed an instinct for identifying those who would present the greatest challenge. Mitchell! Martinez barked, reading from her clipboard. Montana. Let me guess, farm girl thinks she's tough because she can milk cows? No, drill sergeant, Sarah replied, maintaining eye contact while keeping her voice level. I think I'm here to become a soldier. Martinez studied her for a long moment, noting the lack of defensive anger or obvious intimidation in Sarah's response. Most recruits either cowered or tried to prove their toughness immediately. Sarah did neither, suggesting a self-confidence that ran deeper than most. The first weeks of basic training were designed to strip away civilian identities and rebuild recruits as soldiers. For Sarah, this process was less jarring than for many others because her grandfather's training had already introduced her to military discipline and expectations. While other recruits struggled with the early morning wake-up calls, Sarah was already accustomed to pre-dawn workouts. The physical training challenged everyone, but Sarah's months of preparation with her grandfather showed immediately. During the initial fitness assessment, she outperformed not just the other women in her company, but many of the men as well. Her running times were exceptional, her upper body strength impressive for someone her size, and her endurance seemingly unlimited. But physical capability was only part of the equation. Basic training also tested mental resilience, teamwork, and the ability to perform under pressure. Sarah excelled in marksmanship, consistently hitting targets that gave others trouble, and she quickly emerged as a natural leader during group exercises. Her first real test came during the third week of training, during a field exercise designed to simulate combat conditions. The recruits had been deprived of sleep for 36 hours, marched 12 miles with full packs, and then given a complex mission that required coordination under extreme time pressure. Sarah's squad was tasked with reaching an objective while avoiding enemy patrols, a scenario that required stealth, navigation skills, and the ability to make quick decisions under stress. As the designated squad leader for the exercise, Sarah had to coordinate 6 other recruits, all of whom were exhausted, frustrated, and beginning to doubt their ability to complete the mission. Private Johnson, a large man from Texas who had initially dismissed Sarah as too small to be effective, was openly questioning her leadership as they moved through the simulated battlefield. "This is taking too long," he complained during a brief halt. "We should just push straight through instead of all this sneaking around." Sarah studied their map in the fading daylight, considering their options. The direct route Johnson suggested would be faster but would expose them to enemy positions that would result in mission failure. The longer route she had planned would test their endurance but had a much higher probability of success. "Johnson, I understand you're tired," Sarah said quietly, her voice carrying just enough authority to cut through his complaints. "We all are. But our mission is to reach the objective without being detected. Taking shortcuts that compromise the mission isn't leadership, it's poor judgment." Johnson started to argue, but something in Sarah's tone stopped him. Despite her small stature, she projected confidence that made her difficult to dismiss. More importantly, the other squad members were watching this exchange, and Sarah understood that her response would determine whether she maintained their respect for the remainder of the exercise. "Look," she continued, addressing the entire squad, "we have 2 choices. We can take the easy route and fail the mission, or we can dig deep and complete this the right way. I know you're all capable of finishing this. The question is whether you want to succeed or just get it over with." The squad chose to follow Sarah's plan, and, over the next 4 hours, they successfully navigated to their objective without detection. The exercise concluded with their squad being recognized for superior performance, and even Johnson admitted that Sarah's leadership had been instrumental in their success. Drill Sergeant Martinez had observed the entire exercise, and she found herself grudgingly impressed by Sarah's performance. Martinez had seen countless recruits attempt to lead through intimidation or popularity, but Sarah had chosen a more difficult path, earning respect through competence and genuine concern for mission success. After the exercise, Martinez pulled Sarah aside for a private conversation. Such individual attention from a drill sergeant was usually ominous, but Sarah sensed this encounter was different. "Mitchell, what's your long-term goal?" Martinez asked, dispensing with the usual shouting and intimidation. "Special Forces, Drill Sergeant," Sarah replied without hesitation. Martinez nodded slowly. She had suspected as much based on Sarah's performance and attitude. "You know the statistics?" you know how few people make it through that training? I understand the challenges, Drill Sergeant. But I also understand that some people do make it through, and I believe I can be one of them. Belief isn't enough, Martinez said bluntly. Special forces will test you in ways that make this look like summer camp. They'll push you beyond every limit you think you have, and then push you further. Are you prepared for that level of commitment? Sarah met Martinez's gaze steadily. Drill Sergeant, I've been preparing for this my entire life. My grandfather served 3 tours in Vietnam, and he taught me that anything worth doing requires sacrifice. I'm ready to make that sacrifice. Martinez saw something in Sarah's eyes that reminded her of herself 20 years earlier, when she had been told that women couldn't succeed in certain military roles. Then, you better make sure your performance here reflects that commitment. Special Forces selection doesn't just look at your abilities, they look at your record, your leadership potential, and your ability to perform when everything is on the line. The conversation marked a turning point in Sarah's basic training experience. Martinez began pushing her harder than the other recruits, not out of malice but out of recognition that Sarah had the potential to achieve something extraordinary. The additional challenges only strengthened Sarah's resolve and improved her performance. During weapons training, Sarah's marksmanship skills became legendary within her company. She consistently achieved perfect scores with multiple weapon systems, demonstrating an intuitive understanding of ballistics and wind compensation that impressed even the most experienced instructors. Her grandfather's patient teaching had given her fundamentals that many soldiers never fully mastered. Combat training revealed another dimension of Sarah's capabilities. Despite her smaller size, she proved remarkably effective in hand-to-hand combat, using leverage and technique to overcome opponents who possessed significant physical advantages. Her grandfather's training had emphasized these principles, but Sarah added her own innovations, developing combinations that maximized her speed and agility. Perhaps most importantly, Sarah demonstrated leadership qualities that went beyond simple authority. She helped struggling recruits improve their performance, shared her knowledge freely, and consistently put mission success ahead of personal recognition. Other recruits began seeking her advice on everything from military protocol to personal problems, recognizing her as someone who combined competence with genuine concern for others. The final weeks of basic training included increasingly complex exercises designed to simulate real-world military operations. Sarah's company participated in a multi-day field exercise that required them to operate with minimal sleep, limited food, and constant pressure from opposing forces played by advanced training units. During one particularly challenging scenario, Sarah's squad became separated from the main unit while conducting a reconnaissance mission. Radio contact was lost, their GPS equipment malfunctioned, and they found themselves behind enemy lines with incomplete information about friendly force positions. As the senior recruit present, Sarah had to make critical decisions about whether to attempt to rejoin their unit or complete their assigned mission independently. The situation tested every aspect of their training: navigation, communication, tactical thinking, and the ability to maintain composure under extreme uncertainty. Sarah chose to complete the mission, reasoning that abandoning their objective would compromise the larger operation even if it ensured their personal safety. Over the next 18 hours, she led her squad through enemy territory, gathered the required intelligence, and successfully extracted to friendly lines. The exercise controllers later revealed that Sarah's decision had been the tactically correct choice, and that her squad's intelligence had been crucial to the overall mission success. More significantly, her leadership during the crisis had impressed observers from the Special Forces community, who monitored basic training exercises to identify potential candidates for advanced training. Master Sergeant Williams, a Special Forces veteran with 23 years of service, had been watching Sarah's performance throughout the final exercises. After the mission debrief, he approached her with an offer that would change her trajectory within the military. "Mitchell, I've been observing your performance, and I think you have the potential for Special Forces training," Williams said. "But I want you to understand what that means. The selection process will test you in ways you can't imagine. The failure rate is over 80%, and most people who attempt it are already experienced soldiers with years of training." Sarah listened carefully, understanding that this conversation represented an opportunity that few soldiers ever received. What would you recommend, Master Sergeant? I recommend you apply for Special Forces Preparation Course after you complete your advanced individual training. It's a 6-month program designed to prepare candidates for the actual selection process. Even with your obvious abilities, you'll need every advantage you can get. Williams explained the program's requirements and expectations, painting a realistic picture of the challenges ahead. But he also expressed confidence in Sarah's potential, noting that her combination of physical capability, mental toughness, and leadership skills made her an ideal candidate. As basic training concluded, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She had proven herself capable of meeting every challenge the Army had presented, but she also understood that greater tests lay ahead. The girl who had left Montana months earlier had been transformed into a soldier, but the soldier she had become was just the beginning of what she hoped to achieve. During the graduation ceremony, Sarah's parents and grandfather attended via video call, as Thomas's health had deteriorated too much for travel. Seeing his pride in her accomplishment gave Sarah strength for the challenges ahead. She had honored his faith in her abilities, but she also knew that the most difficult parts of her journey were still to come. The ceremony concluded with assignments to advanced individual training, where soldiers would specialize in specific military occupations. Sarah had been assigned to military intelligence training, a field that would provide valuable skills for Special Forces work. But, more importantly, she had been accepted into the Special Forces Preparation Program, beginning her path toward the elite unit she had dreamed of joining. As she packed her belongings for the next phase of her military career, Sarah carried with her the confidence that comes from proven success and the determination that had sustained her through every challenge. She was no longer the small-town girl with dreams of military service. She was a soldier with the skills and mindset to achieve something extraordinary, ready to face whatever tests awaited her on the path to Special Forces. The Special Forces Assessment and Selection course began on a gray October morning at Fort Liberty, North Carolina. Sarah stood among 47 other candidates, all volunteers who had survived their own crucibles to reach this point. The diversity of backgrounds was striking: infantry soldiers with multiple deployments, rangers seeking new challenges, Marines transitioning between services, and a handful of soldiers like Sarah who had shown exceptional promise early in their careers. Captain Reynolds, the selection course commander, addressed the assembled candidates with the kind of brutal honesty that characterized Special Forces culture. Over the next 19 days, we will determine which of you possess the mental and physical attributes necessary for Special Forces service. Most of you will not complete this course. This is not a reflection of your worth as soldiers, but simply recognition that Special Forces requires capabilities that few people possess. Sarah had spent 8 months in the preparation program, transforming her already impressive fitness into something approaching superhuman endurance. She could now march 25 miles with an 80-pound pack, navigate through any terrain using only map and compass, and function effectively after days without sleep. But physical preparation was only part of what the selection process would demand. The psychological component of selection was designed to identify candidates who could maintain rational thinking under extreme stress, make critical decisions with incomplete information, and function effectively in small teams operating behind enemy lines. These qualities couldn't be taught in a traditional sense; they had to be discovered through carefully designed stress tests that pushed candidates beyond their perceived limitations. The first week focused on individual assessment, with each candidate facing a series of challenges designed to reveal their true capabilities. Sarah's first major test came during a land navigation exercise that required her to locate multiple checkpoints across 30 miles of dense forest while carrying a 70-pound pack and operating under strict time constraints. The terrain was deliberately challenging, with thick undergrowth, steep hills, and numerous water obstacles that forced candidates to constantly recalculate their routes. Sarah's grandfather had taught her advanced navigation techniques during their training sessions, including methods for estimating distance and direction when traditional landmarks were unavailable. As she moved through the forest, Sarah encountered other candidates who were clearly struggling with the navigation requirements. Some were making basic errors that would add hours to their routes, while others seemed to be relying on hope rather than systematic navigation principles. During a brief rest halt, Sarah overheard 2 candidates discussing their frustration with the course design. "This is impossible," one complained. "Nobody could complete this route in the time they've given us." Sarah continued her movement without commenting, but she understood that the complainers had already failed a crucial test. Special Forces operations required soldiers who could accomplish impossible missions, who could find ways to succeed when conventional approaches failed. Complaining about impossible standards was essentially admitting unfitness for the role. She completed the navigation course with 20 minutes to spare, one of only 12 candidates to finish within the time limit. But, more importantly, she had demonstrated the kind of systematic thinking and mental resilience that selection cadre were seeking. The second week introduced team exercises that tested candidates' ability to work effectively under stress while maintaining individual performance standards. Sarah found herself assigned to a team with 5 other candidates, including Staff Sergeant Morrison, a ranger with 2 combat deployments who initially questioned whether a relatively junior soldier belonged in the selection process. "No offense, Mitchell," Morrison said during their first team meeting, "but Special Forces isn't a place for people to learn on the job. This is serious business that requires experience most people don't have." Sarah understood Morrison's skepticism, but she also recognized an opportunity to demonstrate her capabilities through performance rather than argument. "You're absolutely right, Staff Sergeant," she replied. "Experience matters. But I'm here to prove that I can contribute to mission success regardless of my time in service." The team's first exercise required them to transport a simulated casualty across 15 miles of difficult terrain while being pursued by opposing forces played by selection cadre. The scenario was designed to create time pressure, physical exhaustion, and the kind of moral stress that came from being responsible for someone else's survival. Morrison initially assumed leadership of the team, a natural development given his rank and experience. But, as the exercise progressed, it became clear that his approach emphasized speed over security, potentially exposing the team to detection by pursuing forces. Sarah waited for an appropriate moment before suggesting an alternative route that would add distance but significantly reduce their exposure to enemy observation. Morrison initially dismissed the suggestion, but when the team narrowly avoided detection at a checkpoint along his chosen route, he began to reconsider Sarah's tactical thinking. "Mitchell, show me your route on the map," Morrison said during a brief halt. Sarah outlined her proposed path, explaining how terrain features could be used to mask their movement and how timing their progress with natural concealment opportunities could virtually eliminate their detection risk. Her analysis was thorough and demonstrated advanced understanding of small unit tactics that impressed not just Morrison but the entire team. "That's good thinking," Morrison admitted. "Let's try your route." The team successfully completed the exercise using Sarah's navigation plan, and Morrison's attitude toward her shifted dramatically. He began seeking her input on subsequent exercises, recognizing that her tactical insights were valuable regardless of her experience level. The third week of selection introduced the most demanding challenges, including the infamous stress week designed to push candidates beyond their breaking points. Sleep deprivation, constant physical exertion, and increasingly complex problem-solving requirements created conditions where many candidates simply couldn't maintain effective performance. Sarah's most difficult test came during a 48-hour exercise that required her to plan and execute a simulated hostage rescue mission while operating on less than 6 hours of sleep over 3 days. The scenario included multiple complications, incomplete intelligence, changing weather conditions, and equipment failures that forced constant adaptation. Working alone with only radio contact with controllers, Sarah had to conduct reconnaissance, develop an assault plan, and execute the mission while being evaluated on every decision she made. The physical demands were extreme, but the mental pressure was even greater because failure meant not just personal disappointment but simulated casualties among hostages she was responsible for rescuing. During the reconnaissance phase, Sarah discovered that the intelligence she had been given was significantly flawed. The target building had different architectural features than described, the number of hostile forces was higher than estimated, and the hostage location had been moved from the briefed position. Lesser candidates might have proceeded with the original plan or requested new guidance from controllers. Sarah chose a third option. She adapted her approach based on the actual conditions she observed, developing a new plan that accounted for the changed circumstances while still achieving the mission objectives. Her modified plan required her to breach the building from an unexpected direction, neutralize guards using stealth rather than direct assault, and evacuate hostages through a route that hadn't been part of the original scenario. The execution demanded peak physical performance while making split-second decisions that could mean success or failure. Sarah completed the mission successfully, rescuing all simulated hostages without casualties. More importantly, her adaptation to changing conditions demonstrated exactly the kind of flexible thinking that made Special Forces operatives effective in real-world situations where plans rarely survived contact with reality. Captain Reynolds personally debriefed Sarah's performance, noting that her ability to think independently while maintaining mission focus was exceptional even by Special Forces standards. Mitchell, what made you decide to completely change your approach rather than working with the original plan? Sir, the mission was to rescue the hostages, not to execute a specific plan, Sarah replied. When conditions changed, the plan had to change too. Sticking to something that no longer matched reality would have compromised mission success. Reynolds nodded approvingly. This kind of mission-focused thinking was exactly what Special Forces sought in its operators. Too many candidates became fixated on following procedures rather than achieving objectives, a mindset that could be fatal in actual operations. The final week of selection focused on leadership assessment, with candidates rotating through positions of responsibility for increasingly complex missions. Sarah found herself leading teams that included soldiers with significantly more experience and higher rank, a situation that tested her ability to earn respect through competence rather than authority. Her most challenging leadership test came when she was assigned to command a 7-person team for a multi-day exercise that simulated a deep reconnaissance mission behind enemy lines. The team included 2 staff sergeants and a sergeant first class, all with combat experience that dwarfed her own. Initially, some team members questioned whether someone with her limited experience could effectively lead such a complex mission. Sergeant First Class Davis, a veteran with 3 combat deployments, was particularly skeptical about taking orders from someone he outranked. "No disrespect, Mitchell," Davis said during mission planning, "but this isn't a training exercise for me. I've done this for real, and I'm not sure you understand what we're up against." Sarah recognized that Davis's concerns were legitimate and based on genuine operational experience. Rather than asserting her authority, she chose to leverage his expertise while maintaining her leadership responsibilities. "You're absolutely right, Sergeant Davis," she replied. "Your experience is invaluable to mission success. I want to hear your input on every aspect of this plan. My job is to make sure we integrate everyone's expertise into a coherent approach that achieves our objectives." This response surprised Davis and the other team members. Most junior leaders would have either backed down or become defensive when challenged. Sarah did neither, instead demonstrating confidence that didn't require her to diminish others' contributions. Over the next 12 hours of mission planning, Sarah facilitated discussions that incorporated insights from every team member while maintaining clear decision-making authority. She demonstrated advanced understanding of reconnaissance techniques, communication procedures, and extraction planning that impressed even the most experienced soldiers on her team. When the mission began, Sarah's leadership style became even more apparent. She positioned herself at points of greatest risk, made decisions quickly when time was critical, and consistently prioritized mission success over personal safety. Her team responded to her leadership not because of her rank but because of her competence and genuine concern for their welfare. During the mission's most challenging phase, the team was detected by opposing forces and had to conduct a fighting withdrawal while maintaining their reconnaissance objectives. Sarah coordinated the team's movement while personally covering their withdrawal, demonstrating both tactical skill and personal courage that earned unanimous respect from her subordinates. "Mitchell's got what it takes," Davis told other candidates after the exercise concluded. "She knows how to use people's strengths without making them feel like she's trying to prove something. That's real leadership." The selection course concluded with individual interviews conducted by senior Special Forces officers who evaluated each candidate's potential for success in operational units. Sarah's interview was conducted by Colonel Harrison, a veteran with 25 years in Special Forces who had commanded units in multiple combat theaters. "Mitchell, you've performed exceptionally well during selection," Harrison began. "But I want to understand your motivation for Special Forces service. Why is this important to you?" Sarah had anticipated this question and had thought carefully about her answer. Sir, I want to serve at the highest level possible because I believe my skills and dedication can make a meaningful difference in protecting people who can't protect themselves. Special Forces represents the opportunity to have maximum impact in situations where conventional approaches aren't sufficient. Harrison probed deeper, asking about her long-term goals, her understanding of Special Forces missions, and her willingness to deploy repeatedly to dangerous locations around the world. Sarah's answers demonstrated not just enthusiasm but sophisticated understanding of the realities of Special Forces service. One final question, Harrison said. You'll face skepticism from some people who don't believe women belong in Special Forces. You may encounter resistance based on gender rather than capability. How will you handle that? Sarah met his gaze steadily. Sir, I've faced that skepticism my entire military career, and I've learned that the only effective response is consistent superior performance. I can't control other people's assumptions, but I can control my own actions. I'll let my work speak for itself. Harrison was impressed by her response. He had seen promising candidates derailed by either defensive anger or naive optimism about the challenges they would face. Sarah demonstrated realistic understanding combined with unwavering confidence in her abilities. The selection results were announced 48 hours later. Of the 47 candidates who began the course, 12 were selected for Special Forces training. Sarah's name was called third, a recognition of her exceptional performance throughout the assessment process. As she stood among the selected candidates, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From her grandfather's workshop in Montana to this formation at Fort Liberty, she had proven herself capable of meeting every challenge placed before her. But she also understood that selection was just the beginning. The real test would come during the qualification course, where she would learn the specialized skills that would make her an effective Special Forces operator. The selection experience had changed Sarah in fundamental ways. She had discovered reserves of strength and determination she hadn't known she possessed, and she had proven to herself and others that exceptional performance could overcome any prejudices based on gender or experience. Most importantly, she had demonstrated the kind of leadership and tactical thinking that would serve her well in operational assignments. Colonel Harrison pulled Sarah aside after the announcement ceremony. Mitchell, you've earned your place here through superior performance. The qualification course will be even more demanding, but I believe you have the potential to become an outstanding Special Forces officer. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. As Sarah prepared for the next phase of her training, she carried with her the confidence that came from proven success under the most demanding conditions. She had faced every test the Army could devise and emerged stronger. The journey toward becoming a Special Forces officer was far from over, but Sarah had proven that she belonged on that path, regardless of what anyone else might think about her gender or background. The Special Forces qualification course stretched ahead like an 18-month gauntlet designed to transform selected candidates into fully operational Green Berets. Sarah entered the program as one of 3 women among 42 students, a ratio that reflected both the rarity of female candidates and the exceptional standards required for selection. The course was divided into distinct phases, each focusing on different aspects of Special Forces capabilities. The first phase concentrated on weapons training and small unit tactics, building upon the foundation established during selection but adding layers of complexity that reflected real-world operational requirements. Sarah's marksmanship skills, already exceptional, were refined to surgical precision under the tutelage of Master Sergeant Williams, a sniper instructor with confirmed kills in 3 different theaters. Williams approached training with scientific methodology, analyzing every aspect of Sarah's shooting technique and introducing advanced concepts that most soldiers never encountered. Mitchell, your fundamentals are outstanding, Williams observed during a long-range precision shooting exercise. But Special Forces marksmanship isn't just about hitting targets. You need to be able to make precision shots under stress, in adverse conditions, and when failure means mission compromise or friendly casualties. The training scenarios Williams designed pushed Sarah's abilities to new levels. She learned to engage targets at extreme ranges while wearing chemical protective gear, to make precision shots after extended physical exertion, and to maintain accuracy while operating in darkness using night vision equipment. During one memorable exercise, Sarah was required to eliminate a simulated enemy sniper who was threatening a friendly convoy. The scenario required her to approach within effective range without detection, identify the target among multiple decoys, and make a precision shot that would neutralize the threat without alerting other enemy forces in the area. The technical challenges were immense. The distance to target was 800 meters, environmental conditions included variable wind patterns, and the target presented only brief exposure windows between covered positions. Sarah had to calculate ballistic solutions while remaining concealed, coordinate with friendly forces to avoid fratricide, and execute the shot during a narrow window of opportunity. Her successful completion of the exercise impressed not just Williams but the entire cadre observing the scenario. The shot placement was perfect, eliminating the target instantly and allowing the convoy to proceed without further harassment. More importantly, her approach demonstrated the kind of systematic thinking and technical competence that characterized elite marksmanship. That was textbook execution, Williams told her during the debrief. You understood that the shot was just the final step in a complex problem-solving process. That's what separates Special Forces marksmen from conventional snipers. The weapons phase also introduced Sarah to advanced explosive devices and demolitions, skills that required both technical precision and absolute attention to safety protocols. Master Sergeant Gonzalez, the demolitions instructor, was initially skeptical about female students in his program, believing that women might be more risk-averse when working with dangerous materials. His skepticism evaporated during Sarah's first practical exercise involving improvised explosive devices. Working with live ordnance under time pressure, Sarah demonstrated not just technical competence but innovative thinking that impressed the entire instructor staff. The scenario required students to breach a fortified position using available materials while minimizing collateral damage to simulated civilians in adjacent structures. Most students chose conventional approaches that would achieve the objective but might endanger non-combatants. Sarah developed a more sophisticated solution that used shaped charges to create precise openings while redirecting blast effects away from civilian areas. Her approach required advanced understanding of explosive physics and careful calculation of charge placement, but the result was a clean breach with minimal risk to innocent parties. Mitchell, where did you learn to think about demolitions like that? Gonzalez asked during the practical demonstration. Master Sergeant, my grandfather taught me that every tool has multiple applications if you understand the underlying principles, Sarah replied. I approached this as an engineering problem rather than just a demolitions exercise. Gonzalez nodded approvingly. This kind of analytical thinking was exactly what Special Forces sought in its operators. Too many soldiers learned procedures without understanding principles, limiting their effectiveness when standard approaches weren't sufficient. The medical training phase introduced Sarah to advanced combat medicine that went far beyond conventional first aid. Special Forces medics were expected to perform surgical procedures under battlefield conditions, manage complex trauma cases with limited resources, and make life-or-death medical decisions without physician oversight. Dr. Captain Martinez, a trauma surgeon who had volunteered for Special Forces duty, conducted training that pushed students to their intellectual and emotional limits. The medical scenarios were designed to simulate the worst possible conditions, mass casualty events, resource shortages, and ethical dilemmas that had no clear answers. Sarah's first major medical test came during a simulated terrorist attack that created multiple casualties requiring immediate triage decisions. With limited medical supplies and no possibility of rapid evacuation, she had to determine which patients could be saved and which were beyond help. The scenario included conscious casualties pleading for treatment, family members demanding immediate attention for less critical injuries, and time pressure that made thorough examination impossible. Sarah had to make decisions based on limited information while maintaining emotional control in circumstances designed to create maximum stress. Her approach demonstrated both technical competence and mature judgment that impressed the medical staff. She prioritized patients based on survivability rather than emotional appeal, allocated resources efficiently, and maintained communication with all casualties even when she couldn't provide immediate treatment. Mitchell's performance was exceptional, Dr. Martinez noted in her evaluation. She demonstrated the kind of decision-making ability that saves lives when conventional medical support isn't available. Her emotional control under extreme stress was particularly impressive. The intelligence and reconnaissance phase revealed another dimension of Sarah's capabilities. Working with active duty intelligence officers, students learned to gather, analyze, and disseminate information that could determine mission success or failure. Major Thompson, the intelligence instruction supervisor, designed scenarios that required students to operate independently in hostile territory while maintaining communication with higher headquarters and supporting conventional units. Sarah's background in mathematics and her grandfather's emphasis on systematic thinking served her well in intelligence analysis. She learned to identify patterns in seemingly unrelated information, to distinguish reliable sources from disinformation, and to present complex intelligence in formats that commanders could use for tactical decision-making. During one exercise, Sarah was assigned to conduct reconnaissance of a simulated terrorist training facility while gathering intelligence on enemy capabilities, intentions, and vulnerabilities. The mission required her to infiltrate the area undetected, observe enemy activities over several days, and compile a comprehensive intelligence report that would support a subsequent assault operation. Working alone for 72 hours, Sarah observed enemy routines, identified key personnel, and documented security measures that would affect friendly operations. Her intelligence report included detailed facility layouts, guard schedules, and tactical recommendations that impressed both the instructor staff and the operational planners who reviewed her work. Mitchell's intelligence product was operational quality, Major Thompson commented. Her analysis was thorough, her recommendations were tactically sound, and her presentation was professional enough to brief senior commanders. That's exactly what we expect from Special Forces intelligence personnel. The cultural training component of the qualification course prepared students for operations in foreign countries where understanding local customs could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Sarah learned multiple foreign languages, studied regional histories, and developed cultural sensitivity that would enable her to work effectively with indigenous forces. Her language aptitude surprised even her instructors. Building on the foundation of Spanish she had learned in high school, Sarah mastered Arabic and Pashto with remarkable speed, demonstrating pronunciation and grammatical understanding that typically required years of study. Professor Ahmed, a native Pashto speaker who conducted cultural immersion training, noted that Sarah's approach to language learning went beyond memorization to genuine cultural understanding. Miss Mitchell doesn't just learn words and phrases, he observed. She understands the cultural context that gives language meaning. That's a rare ability that will serve her well in operational assignments. The culminating exercise of the qualification course was a month-long scenario that integrated all previously learned skills into a complex mission requiring independent operation in simulated hostile territory. Students were assigned to small teams and given missions that tested every aspect of their training while operating under realistic constraints. Sarah found herself assigned as team leader for a mission requiring her unit to establish contact with friendly guerrilla forces, train them in advanced tactics, and coordinate their activities with a larger conventional operation. The scenario took place in a rural training area designed to replicate conditions in various global hotspots where special forces typically operated. Her team included students with diverse specialties, a communications expert, a medic, a demolition specialist, and an intelligence analyst. Sarah's responsibility was to coordinate their individual capabilities into effective team performance while achieving complex mission objectives. The mission began with a night infiltration that required the team to penetrate enemy security without detection while carrying specialized equipment needed for subsequent operations. Sarah planned the infiltration route using advanced navigation techniques, coordinated timing with supporting elements, and successfully led her team through multiple security checkpoints without compromise. Once established in their operational area, Sarah's team had to locate and make contact with guerrilla forces while maintaining operational security that prevented enemy detection. This phase required advanced human intelligence techniques, cultural sensitivity, and the ability to build trust with foreign nationals who had good reason to be suspicious of outsiders. Sarah's language skills and cultural understanding proved crucial during initial contact with the simulated guerrilla forces. The role players, many of whom were native speakers, were impressed by her ability to communicate not just in their language but with appropriate cultural nuances that demonstrated respect and understanding. "Your approach to our people is very good," the guerrilla commander told Sarah through an interpreter, even though she understood his comments in the original language. Many soldiers try to give orders without understanding our situation. You listen first, then speak. That shows wisdom. Over the following weeks, Sarah's team trained the guerrilla forces in advanced tactics while gathering intelligence on enemy activities throughout their operational area. The training scenarios required Sarah to adapt special forces techniques to the capabilities and limitations of indigenous forces who lacked formal military education but possessed intimate knowledge of local conditions. Her approach emphasized principles rather than procedures, teaching guerrilla fighters to understand why certain tactics worked rather than simply how to execute them. This educational philosophy enabled the indigenous forces to modify techniques based on specific situations, making them more effective than forces that relied on rigid adherence to standard procedures. The mission's climax came when Sarah's team had to coordinate guerrilla forces in support of a simulated conventional assault on an enemy stronghold. The operation required precise timing, secure communications, and the ability to adapt to changing conditions while maintaining coordination with multiple friendly elements. Sarah's planning integrated guerrilla capabilities into the conventional operation in ways that maximized their effectiveness while minimizing their exposure to enemy retaliation. Her approach demonstrated advanced understanding of both conventional and unconventional warfare principles, creating synergies that enhanced overall mission effectiveness. The operation's success exceeded all expectations. The guerrilla forces successfully interdicted enemy reinforcements, provided crucial intelligence on enemy defensive positions, and conducted diversionary attacks that allowed conventional forces to achieve their objectives with minimal casualties. Mitchell's performance during this exercise was exceptional, Colonel Peterson, the course director, noted in his evaluation. She demonstrated not just individual competence but the ability to multiply force effectiveness through superior leadership and cultural understanding. These are exactly the qualities we seek in Special Forces officers. The qualification course concluded with graduation ceremonies that recognized the transformation of selected candidates into fully qualified Special Forces operators. Of the 42 students who began the program, 28 completed all requirements and earned their Green Berets. Sarah stood among the graduates with a sense of accomplishment that went beyond personal achievement. She had proven that exceptional performance could overcome any barriers based on gender or background assumptions. More importantly, she had developed capabilities that would enable her to contribute meaningfully to Special Forces missions around the world. General Morrison, the commanding general who presided over graduation ceremonies, personally congratulated Sarah on her achievement. Lieutenant Mitchell, your performance throughout this program has been exemplary. You've demonstrated that dedication and competence are the only qualifications that matter for Special Forces service. I expect great things from your future operational assignments. As Sarah prepared for her first operational assignment, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. From her grandfather's workshop in Montana to graduation as a Special Forces officer, she had proven herself capable of achieving anything she set her mind to. But she also understood that graduation was just the beginning. The real test would come during operational deployments where her training would be applied to actual missions with real consequences. The qualification course had transformed Sarah from a promising candidate into a highly skilled Special Forces officer with capabilities that few soldiers ever developed. She had mastered advanced marksmanship, explosives, medicine, intelligence, and cultural skills that would enable her to operate effectively in any environment. Most importantly, she had developed the confidence and competence that would allow her to lead others in the most challenging circumstances imaginable. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell's first operational deployment took her to Afghanistan's Helmand province, where her Special Forces team was tasked with training Afghan National Army units and conducting counter-terrorism operations against Taliban forces that had regrouped following the American withdrawal and subsequent return of coalition forces. The forward operating base was a collection of prefabricated structures and defensive positions carved into the harsh landscape, home to approximately 300 American and coalition personnel who were working to stabilize a region that had seen decades of continuous warfare. Sarah's arrival as the team's newest member was met with the kind of professional assessment that characterized military units in combat zones. Colonel James Harrison commanded the base and its various operations, a career Special Forces officer with 4 previous deployments who had earned respect through competent leadership under fire. His initial reaction to Sarah's assignment was cautious rather than hostile, but it was clear that he harbored doubts about integrating female personnel into direct action missions. "Mitchell, welcome to FOB Courage," Colonel Harrison said during her initial briefing. "Your qualifications are impressive, and I've heard good things about your training performance. But this is a different environment than anything you've experienced. Combat operations don't allow for learning curves or adjustment periods." Sarah understood the colonel's concerns and appreciated his directness rather than diplomatic evasion of obvious questions. "Sir, I'm here to contribute to mission success, however you determine is most appropriate. I understand that trust in combat is earned through performance, not credentials." Harrison studied her for a moment, noting the absence of defensive posturing or attempts to prove herself through words rather than actions. "You'll be assigned to Captain Rodriguez's team. They're experienced operators who will evaluate your capabilities fairly but without any special considerations. Your performance will determine your role in future operations." Captain Elena Rodriguez commanded Operational Detachment Alpha 574, a 12-person team that included some of the most experienced Special Forces soldiers in the theater. Rodriguez herself was a veteran of 3 combat deployments who had earned her position through exceptional performance rather than administrative necessity. Rodriguez's initial assessment of Sarah was thorough and professional. During their first private conversation, she outlined expectations that were both demanding and fair. "Mitchell, I don't care about your gender, your background, or your training scores. I care about whether you can perform under fire and contribute to team effectiveness. Prove that, and you'll earn my respect. Fail, and you'll be reassigned." Sarah's integration into the team began with routine operations designed to assess her capabilities under actual field conditions. Her first mission was a night patrol through disputed territory where Taliban forces regularly planted improvised explosive devices and conducted ambush attacks against coalition forces. Moving through darkness with the team, Sarah demonstrated the navigation and stealth skills she had mastered during training while adapting to the unique challenges of Afghan terrain. The rocky, mountainous landscape required different techniques than the forests and swamps where she had learned her craft, but her ability to adapt quickly impressed team members who were watching her performance carefully. Sergeant First Class Martinez, the team's senior enlisted soldier, had initially been skeptical about female integration into direct action missions. But during that first patrol, he observed Sarah's movement techniques, her radio discipline, and her situational awareness with growing appreciation for her competence. "She moves like she knows what she's doing," Martinez commented to another team member during a brief halt. "No wasted motion, good noise discipline, and she's keeping proper spacing. That's not beginner's luck." Over the following weeks, Sarah participated in increasingly complex operations that tested every aspect of her training. She conducted reconnaissance missions that required extended observation of enemy positions, participated in cordon and search operations in hostile villages, and provided overwatch for conventional units conducting routine patrols through dangerous areas. Her performance consistently exceeded expectations, but, more importantly, she demonstrated the kind of tactical thinking and leadership potential that marked her as someone capable of greater responsibilities. During a mission to capture a Taliban commander responsible for several attacks on coalition forces, Sarah's quick thinking prevented what could have been a catastrophic intelligence failure. The operation required the team to establish observation positions around a compound where the target was believed to be meeting with other insurgent leaders. Sarah was assigned to a position that provided overwatch for the primary assault team while maintaining communication with supporting elements. During the pre-assault observation period, Sarah noticed movement patterns around the compound that suggested the target might be aware of coalition interest in his activities. The security measures were more elaborate than intelligence reports had indicated, and Sarah observed what appeared to be escape routes being prepared. Rather than waiting for scheduled communication windows, Sarah immediately contacted the assault team leader to report her observations. Her intelligence enabled the team to adjust their approach, positioning additional elements to block escape routes and modifying their assault plan to account for enhanced enemy security measures. The mission's success was largely attributed to Sarah's alertness and initiative in reporting unexpected conditions. The Taliban commander was captured along with several associates, and subsequent interrogation revealed an extensive network of insurgent activities that coalition forces had been unaware of. Captain Rodriguez personally commended Sarah's performance during the mission debrief. Mitchell's reconnaissance and initiative prevented this target from escaping and provided intelligence that will support future operations. That's exactly the kind of performance we expect from Special Forces personnel. But Sarah's defining moment came during her third month of deployment, during an operation that would test every skill she had developed and prove her worth in the most dramatic way possible. Intelligence reports indicated that a Taliban force was planning a major attack on a coalition convoy carrying medical supplies to remote villages in the region. The convoy route passed through a valley where insurgent forces could position themselves on commanding terrain, creating conditions for a devastating ambush that could result in significant coalition casualties and loss of critical humanitarian aid. Colonel Harrison's staff developed a plan to preempt the Taliban attack by inserting special forces teams into the valley ahead of the convoy, where they could identify enemy positions and either eliminate the threat or guide precision airstrikes that would neutralize hostile forces. Sarah's team was assigned to establish an observation post on high ground overlooking the convoy route, where they could provide early warning of enemy activity while directing supporting fires if needed. The mission required a night infiltration followed by extended observation under conditions where detection would mean certain combat against numerically superior forces. The infiltration proceeded smoothly, with the team reaching their assigned position without enemy contact. They established a concealed observation post that provided excellent visibility over the valley floor while offering multiple escape routes if their position became compromised. As dawn broke over the Afghan landscape, Sarah began the systematic observation that would occupy her for the next 12 hours. Using advanced optics, she methodically scanned the terrain for signs of enemy activity while maintaining communication with other friendly elements in the area. By mid-morning, Sarah had identified what appeared to be Taliban scouts moving through positions that would be ideal for ambush sites. The enemy soldiers were well camouflaged and moving carefully, but Sarah's trained eye caught movement patterns that indicated organized reconnaissance rather than routine travel. She immediately reported her observations to the team leader, who coordinated with higher headquarters to begin developing response options. Over the next hour, Sarah's continued observation revealed the extent of Taliban preparations for the planned ambush. Enemy forces were positioning themselves in a horseshoe formation that would allow them to attack the convoy from three sides simultaneously, creating overlapping fields of fire that would be extremely difficult for escort forces to counter. The Taliban had also prepared escape routes and rally points that would enable them to disperse quickly after the attack. Sarah's detailed reporting enabled coalition planners to understand the full scope of the threat and develop appropriate countermeasures. But, as the convoy's departure time approached, new intelligence indicated that the Taliban force was larger than initially estimated and included heavy weapons that could defeat the convoy's armor protection. Colonel Harrison faced a critical decision: delay the convoy and risk loss of medical supplies desperately needed by civilian populations, or proceed with the mission and accept the possibility of significant casualties among coalition and Afghan forces. The situation changed dramatically when Sarah reported movement that indicated the Taliban forces were repositioning to attack alternative convoy routes. The enemy commanders had anticipated possible route changes and deployed forces to cover multiple approaches to their target area. "Sir, this looks like a coordinated operation with command and control elements directing movement of multiple units," Sarah reported during an emergency communication. "The enemy is adapting to our possible responses, which suggests sophisticated planning and leadership." This intelligence prompted Colonel Harrison to make a bold decision. Rather than avoiding the Taliban forces or attempting to suppress them with airstrikes that might cause civilian casualties, he would deploy additional special forces teams to conduct a coordinated ground assault that would eliminate the threat while capturing intelligence about enemy capabilities and intentions. Sarah's team was assigned a crucial role in the operation. They would provide precision fire support for assaulting elements while maintaining observation of enemy forces to prevent escape or reinforcement. The mission required her to engage targets at extreme range while coordinating with multiple friendly elements to avoid fratricide. As the assault began, Sarah found herself in the position she had trained for throughout her military career, a critical role in a complex operation where her performance would directly impact mission success and friendly force casualties. The Taliban forces, realizing they were under attack, began attempting to escape through routes Sarah's team was positioned to cover. Her first engagement came when a group of Taliban fighters attempted to withdraw through a narrow valley that offered concealment from other coalition elements. Using her advanced marksmanship skills, Sarah engaged the enemy force at a range of 600 meters, making precision shots that eliminated key threats while allowing other enemy personnel to be captured by pursuing coalition forces. The engagement continued for over 2 hours as Taliban forces attempted various escape and evasion techniques. Sarah's position provided overwatch for multiple friendly elements, and her accurate fire prevented several enemy attempts to break contact or establish defensive positions that could have resulted in coalition casualties. During the operation's most critical phase, a Taliban commander attempted to rally his scattered forces for a counterattack against one of the assault teams. The enemy leader had positioned himself in a location that provided cover from direct assault but was visible from Sarah's elevated position. The shot required maximum precision under combat conditions, 750 meters in variable wind, with friendly forces in close proximity to the target, and time pressure that left no margin for error. Sarah calculated her ballistic solution while coordinating with the assault team to ensure positive target identification and confirm that friendly personnel were clear of her line of fire. Her shot eliminated the Taliban commander instantly, preventing the counterattack and enabling coalition forces to complete their assault without casualties. The precision and timing of her engagement drew immediate praise from the assault team leader, who witnessed the shot's impact on enemy morale and organization. "Outstanding shot, Mitchell," Captain Rodriguez commented over the radio. "That eliminated their command element and prevented what could have been a serious problem for our guys on the ground." The operation concluded with complete success. All Taliban forces in the ambush sites were either eliminated or captured, the convoy completed its mission without incident, and coalition forces sustained no casualties. Most importantly, captured intelligence revealed details of Taliban planning that enabled subsequent operations against other insurgent activities in the region. During the mission debrief, Colonel Harrison personally recognized Sarah's contribution to the operation's success. "Lieutenant Mitchell's performance was exemplary," he stated before the assembled operation personnel. "Her reconnaissance, reporting, and precision fire support were crucial to achieving our objectives while protecting friendly forces." But the colonel's next comments would become the moment that defined Sarah's military career and silenced any remaining doubts about her capabilities. "I'll be honest," Harrison continued, his voice carrying across the briefing room. "When Lieutenant Mitchell was assigned to this unit, I had reservations about integrating female personnel into direct action missions. I was wrong. Her performance today demonstrated capabilities that any Special Forces officer would be proud to claim. She proved that competence and courage are the only qualifications that matter for military service." The room fell silent as the impact of the colonel's words sank in. This was a commander known for demanding the highest standards, someone whose praise was earned through exceptional performance rather than political correctness. His public acknowledgement of Sarah's abilities carried weight that went far beyond the immediate audience. "Lieutenant Mitchell," Harrison said, turning to address her directly, "you've proven something important today. You've shown that when someone says she's just a girl, they're revealing their own limitations, not yours. Your performance speaks louder than any criticism ever could." Sarah felt the weight of the moment, understanding that she had achieved something significant not just for herself but for every woman who would follow her path into military service. The journey from her grandfather's workshop in Montana to this briefing room in Afghanistan had required every skill she possessed, but it had also revealed capabilities she hadn't known she had. In the weeks that followed, Sarah's reputation spread throughout the coalition forces in Afghanistan. She became known as one of the most competent and reliable operators in the theater, someone whose gender was irrelevant compared to her proven ability to accomplish any mission assigned to her. The story of her performance during the convoy protection operation became legendary within Special Forces circles, not because it was unique for a female soldier, but because it represented the kind of exceptional competence that defined elite military service regardless of who demonstrated it. Colonel Harrison's words proved prophetic. Sarah had indeed proven that just a girl could accomplish anything when armed with skill, determination, and the unwavering belief that competence was the only qualification that mattered. Her journey from small-town dreamer to decorated Special Forces officer had challenged every assumption about gender roles in military service and proved that courage and capability knew no gender boundaries. As Sarah continued her deployment, serving with distinction in operations throughout Afghanistan, she carried with her the knowledge that she had achieved something extraordinary. She had not only proven herself worthy of the uniform she wore, but had opened doors for future generations of women who would follow in her footsteps. The girl who had once been told she was just a girl had become a soldier whose performance spoke louder than any words ever could, leaving even the most skeptical colonel speechless in recognition of her extraordinary capabilities.